Well, there's a mess of wires under the dash, and I know not all of it is necessary, especially this is 79. It doesn't need much wiring. More than you think, but not much. Now, I just pulled this out. If you can see, there is this connector back here that was plugged in, and there is a nest of wires going into it. And I just did some diagnosis, and I'm trying to clean up this wiring, and I figured I'd bring you along. So this says automobile security. I'm assuming this is some sort of theft deterrent. I also found a remote with the same company like a couple years ago in this car. So originally I thought it was a garage door opener. Now I am pretty convinced it's theft deterrent. However, this white wire you see was not connected to anything. I mean, unless the wire broke at some point, but I just pulled it out and it was not connected to anything. Another thing, there is a toggle switch down here that someone used this angle bracket thing to mount it up. This toggle switch was connected directly to this box, and I just used a multimeter to test, and it is in the off position. So if you flip it the other way, that's on, so that's off. So it really wasn't doing anything, and I would prefer to not have theft deterrent, or really, I don't want this nest of wiring in here that's not doing anything. So let's start cleaning things up. Well, I found the manual online, so we're going to follow this. So the 8-pin connector, all it does is about the door locks essentially. So I'm gonna assume this one does not have much wiring, actually ran. So this alarm apparently seems to be like a 90s thing, and it's a whole kit. It comes with the wires. So this ball of wires that what it came with, and then you just wire it into your car. So that's pretty cool, pretty interesting. I just not a fan. So we're gonna remove it. Okay, so it looks like we split off. There's this red and black wire. Let's see, what does that do? Parking light plus. So it's supposed to go to the parking light wire, and it looks like that's this connection right here. They spliced it in. So I guess brown is the parking light for the headlight, and they spliced in, so we don't need that anymore. Okay, so I cut off the splice for that red and black wire to this parking light wire off the headlight, and just reconnected this, heat shielded up. We got our electrical tape looking good again. So now let's keep moving. Now back to this. Pull this red black one out. So yeah, we had a couple wires not connected to anything. Now we're split off. I know this gets a constant battery voltage and ground. I'm assuming the red one. We'll check the wiring diagram again. But let's look at these ones on the left, because I think these ones aren't important. Okay, so this blue with white stripe, green with white stripe, it's door unlock common and door lock common. I think the blue is the lock. But if we look over here, pull back some electrical tape, and it's just twisted up against this gray wire. I'm assuming this green with white stripe is doing the same thing, so this is why we're taking this apart. 3 more wires left for the first 8-pin, and these have to do with the positive for the door lock and door unlock, and then the red battery positive. Now they happen to be spliced into the same butt connector here, and they have 3 thick wires spliced on one side, and then these 3 smaller ones on the other side. I didn't even know you could even fit 3 into one of these. So we got to cut this, but we also need to trace this to figure out where did this go to. We're doing it. We're cutting the zip tie that holds all those wires together. Look at this nest. Okay, well, I traced the red wire all the way down, and it runs along the loom here. Pulled it out, and it comes to this here, where this is a fuse right in here, and this is like an easy way to add a jumper or something off your battery. So it has this terminal here, and one of the first things I did, because this wasn't hooked up to anything, I put electrical tape on this when I got this car. and just seal it off because I didn't know what it did. So I didn't want it to touch anything, but it looks like it would have been right there on the end of the battery. Okay, and the last two wires ended up going to this relay. Now, this is not in the instructions, so I'm going to have to follow what these wires go off of. They were tapped into the blue and the green and see what they splice into. Now, if they are just splicing into something, that makes it easier for me to diagnose. But if it's actually a relay controlling something, that's a little harder. So we'll just trace this wire. But for now, the 4-pin is done. Now onto the 14-pin connector. This is door trigger line positive or minus. Looks like it doesn't matter. But looks like they just jumped into the courtesy lamp down here. They spliced it in just like they've been doing. So we're going to cut this connection, reseal it, and then this wire will be done. Okay, and this orange wire ends up spliced into a connection here, which goes into this thicker black wire, which had 3 wires going off of it. This thick, it's not actually a black wire, it's like a sleeving for 3 smaller wires in it. And I followed it, and zip tied up on the column was this, which it says it's a vibration and impact sensor. Interesting. Okay, now we have just 2 final things left. So this relay, the relay that I found first that was connected to the 8-pin connector, it has this green wire that comes off of it and goes somewhere into the firewall, so somewhere in the engine bay. Now this purple one spliced onto this blue goes onto the 14-pin connector, and this was it was labeled as an optional trunk release, which 79 Corvette does not have a trunk, so I don't know what it was wired for exactly, especially why is it in this big relay. So let's cut this connection from the purple to the blue since we know where this goes, and now let's start tracing this green wire, and there's a brown wire too near it that also goes into the engine bay. So I'm tracing some of the positive and ground wires that are being ran to the back, and they were labeled as siren, and they went all the way to the back. There's a grommet back there, and then underneath the car here by the antenna there's this big horn looking thing. This is the aftermarket horn alarm that they installed in here. Now off of the 14-pin is a gray wire. This is the starter interrupt or disable wire, and it goes into this relay. This relay has thick purple, thick yellow. Now purple and yellow are typically the starter relay colors, and I believe reading off the instructions that this is a pre-assembled relay. I don't think this is a factory relay. It is Bosch though, so I don't know. But if I just cut this gray wire off, I should have no concerns about it not starting because this was never powered up and it started just fine before. So there's also a black kind of jumper thing with something in here that's jumping these wires anyways. So we're just going to cut this gray wire and then tape it up and you'll never know. Ended up tracing the wires that go into the engine bay. They go into the harness here where there's a grommet into the firewall, and it belongs here, and it goes right to this same horn alarm thing that we saw on the back. So this in the engine bay is not factory. Fooled me. Alright, so it's Phillips heads. They look pretty rusty. We'll see. Oh, that one's coming off. I think we'll be good since I got a good screwdriver now. Alright, 3 screws removed. Here it comes. So we have our black and red. Maybe I should try powering this up, see what it sounds like. I bet this would be pretty loud. Okay, and this harness meets up to here, where it splits off into another harness. Yeah, there's nothing down here anymore, and instead it goes into this harness, which had these 2 small wires twisted together. Normally that's like CAN bus stuff, but 90s, I don't know. I don't know what that was for. But then we have a big black wire, not sure what that was for. We have our green that we got a trace that goes that way. But these wires, oh, these are the green and brown wires down there. So, and this green wire that goes over to the right happens to be a hood sensor. So it detects when the hood's popped and not. Alright, and the last bit connected to the second relay we found. And it ties into some wires off of the ignition switch. So there's a pink wire off of the ignition switch. And it looks like it was supposed to go from the ignition switch to here, down into the firewall. So it looks like I can just cut those and wire them back together. If you can see up here, we also have a bad connection there, and we have more stuff going off of the ignition switch. So before I just start putting things back together, I need to figure out what these wires actually do on the ignition switch to make sure that it is safe to do that and that they are supposed to be back together. Okay, I found a wiring diagram, and for this ignition switch, this yellow wire is in fact supposed to go to here, and if we follow this purple splice in, it goes to this relay that we have down here with the big purple and yellow wire. And so that yellow part of the relay is the other side, so that's how I know it's supposed to be together. And then it goes down to the fuse box. So I wonder what I didn't have with this not working, but anyways, we have a pink wire up here, which is another ignition switch on positive, and this one goes to the tachometer on the distributor. And same thing, it's interrupted with a relay from this kit. So if we just connect it back together, we see we got pink on one side, pink on the other, we'll be good to go. So those are the two connections I need to make. Tough thing is they're under the dash, but I'll figure it out. It's been a few days, but we're back working on removing this old wiring out of the Corvette. And so over here on the ignition switch, we've made our connections, we've made our repairs. So it's been crimped and heat shrinked, and we are good to go. We have two connections on the same wire because of the way it was cut, but you know, it's working now. So this is good to go. Our connections are good from there. And that should be everything out of the old alarm system that was a part of the car. Next up, we want to tackle removing some of the old radio speaker wiring. Now this had a sound system put in it in the late 80s, and there's just a ton of tech everywhere. And maybe it was the 90s, early 90s, but either way, this is something. This is electric M something, and this was right here under the seat. This green wire goes down to the battery positive, I think, one of them. But we got a bunch of wiring to trace here. But this one's easy because there's nothing important really going on. So since it's all just speaker wiring, well, radio, sound system wiring, we can just remove it without causing the engine not to start or anything like that. Okay, I managed to pull out most of the mess back here. So this would be the passenger side of the storage compartment, and there's a big amp pack here with tons and tons of wiring. So let's pull all of this out. And here's the mess in the light where you can see it better, and yeah, lots and lots of wiring going on. I'm gonna disconnect the speaker wires that hook up to the amp, and then we need to trace back and remove them. So I found a FM booster. I'll show you that once I find it again. And it led off to some of these relays, which were also going to the front speakers. So I'm assuming these two relays are not factory. They were part of the sound system, because right now everything they're connected to is disconnected while I remove the old sound system. So we'll just keep pulling this out. So this is the FM booster that I found in there. Just reading on the back of it, it says between these frequencies it boosts it, and it was hooked up directly to the antenna, and then the other end goes into the radio. So I guess this was supposed to boost the signal or something. Okay, and one last thing to figure out that I'm not really sure what this is. So this was just kind of hidden under here, under the center instrument cluster. Not really sure. It's hooked up to the sound system that was in here. Now I traced it all the way here. The thing that confuses me is it goes into this wrapped up harness here that then goes into this main thick harness, and I don't see any openings into this main harness, so I don't believe that they modified the main harness. So I'm thinking these three wires that I see out of here, the yellow, black, and the gray, actually did come out of the main harness. I don't know what they did originally. That's my problem. Same with these wires here. We got a pink with black and then a all orange. Not really sure what these wires are doing, but I just know they came out of the main harness originally, and so they would have came to something. I just don't know what they hooked up to. Well, speaking about the pink wire, I misspoke. I found what it's actually hooked up to. This. And now my car, ever since I got it, was missing something here. Just figured out it's this. This is supposed to go there. It's supposed to look like that, but the tabs are broken. So this is the rear defrost switch. I had to look that up. And so apparently the wiring's all here, and so I'm not going to mess with this, and probably one day we'll get that working, but for now I'm just going to keep it as is, set it aside. Maybe I'll figure out a way to mount it up, but it is broken, so we'll see. But so that means this pink wire here, I have nothing to worry about. That's how it's supposed to be. The orange wire, then, I assume this connector is factory, and that all they did was just splice in right here. So I'll just cut this off, tape it up, and then wrap it up, and it'll just sit aside. I got the battery hooked up. I got a jumper on it. My battery is going dead, so my jumper is not fully charged. So this may or may not work, but we're gonna try to start it up. Now I've disconnected the brake switch because that was loose, so disconnected that to prevent draw and whatnot. Now let's see if my lights still work. They do, so we do have power. Okay, we're in neutral. Let's see if we can crank it over. We got the blower fan going. No smoke, nothing. Really got to be careful because we just touched a lot of wire, so we want to make sure we're good still. Alright, gen light came on. Everything's starting to look good again. Let's crank it. It should crank. I'm just going to stop it once it cranks. Oh, my battery's not good enough for that. Hey, it started turning a little bit. Yeah, my battery's not good enough to crank it. While my battery charger is charging, I hooked up my power probe to one of the horns. Let's see how loud this is, if it even works. Oh, I don't think it works. Okay, hooked up the other one. Turn my power on. You hear that? Oh, that is loud. Holy man, I only pressed it for a split second, about blew my eardrums out. So, with it being that loud, I don't think this ran off at 12 volts. This was probably more like a 3 or 5 volt system. But I gave it 12 volts and it blasted. And that's one. Jeez. Okay, cranking. Nope. Well, I don't think the car's going to start tonight. The battery's just too far dead, so I got to leave it on jumper. I'm going to leave the jumper charging overnight, but then we'll charge the jumper tomorrow and keep an eye on it, just make sure it's okay. But that's about as far as I can get done in this video. I think it's going to be fine. I did hear the starter move a little bit, so I think everything's working. It's just a battery issue. We don't have any fires, nothing like that. Cross your fingers, everything stays good. But look at this mess that we took out. This is a lot of wiring, and has an amp, has 2 horns or sirens, and then just various other stuff like relays. We got the security system. There's just a lot, and I'm glad we took the time to take all this out, because this was unnecessary and I was never going to reuse this stuff. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.